competing at the CrossFit Games in 2007, 2008, I was in awe of like their abilities, but I was like, I'm not that good yet. But it didn't take long for my skills or my fitness level to sort of stand out amongst, everybody that I was
Mm.
around. People that start out with CrossFit, they don't have that big training base, and they try and learn skills of CrossFit. They get so frustrated. Like, I
Yeah,
can't
for
learn
sure.
how to do a muscle up. It's like, well, you haven't done strict pull-ups for the last decade. I think probably total prize money was less than $20,000. There's a certain amount of stress that your body can tolerate. We didn't have the luxury of just being full-time athletes. I didn't, certainly. I think also one thing that I've never really talked about on a podcast before, the same discipline and hard work on relationships and on,
Mm.
mindset and on emotional attunement to oneself and to others, like that has the power to change our experience on this planet. Mhm.
All right, let's get the party started here.
Let's do it.
First and foremost, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, man.
Hey,
And I
my
want to start
pleasure.
with a praise. I want to start with a praise. I want to acknowledge you for what you do for the fitness space, because there's so much bullshit out there, and I feel like you're one of those who is still real and give
Mm.
valuable information that's actually helpful to people rather than harm them. So I think you're doing a really good job, and I just want to say, keep going, just right
Thanks.
away.
I appreciate that. And the day that I don't respect or, excuse me, earn that type of feedback is the day that I probably going to retire and quit, because then I don't know why I'm even doing this.
Keep that up, man. It's amazing.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Today, I want to talk about a couple of things. First, your own journey as an athlete, as a father, as a business owner. Then the idea of functional bodybuilding, what it is, and how you turn it into a business.
Hmm.
And then lastly, how you stay in shape. And hopefully we get some practical advice from you that
Hmm.
you can give to people who want to look and move like you. So is that good for you?
Sounds great. Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
So I want to start with your background. How did you find your way into the fitness scene?
Um, well, I mean, I think I had I developed a love and a passion for just fitness for my own personal wellness and sense of self early on. So like young, high school, even before high school, just love physical fitness. I love the fitness aspect of the sports that I played. I played a number of sports, but what I came to learn over the years as I was a teenager and into my early 20s was that the aspects that I loved the most about sport were just the fitness components of it. So I loved being in great shape. I loved games. I loved some of the sport, like the games themselves, but not as much as I enjoyed the physical challenge of them.
Is it just a
And
challenge or h- how to look good? Was it more aesthetics
well,
driven, performance driven back then?
it was a bit of everything. I mean, my perception of aesthetics has just like evolved over my lifetime. And when I was a teenager, what I thought looked good was vastly different than it was today. So I wasn't so aesthetics driven back then. Of course, I wanted to have some muscle, but it was like how I felt. When I was training, I would sleep better. I would be better in school. I would just be more confident. Like it was this kind of 360-degree combination of impact that fitness had on the rest of my life.
Mm.
And I think I knew that early on, and I would talk
Did
about
you
it,
have,
and I would.
sorry that I interrupted. Did you have a phase in your life, especially when were a teenager, when you were, going out, drinking, I don't know, doing drugs, like whatever teenager do nowadays?
I mean, I had, you know, small a small connection to alcohol. Like I would drink socially with friends in high school because that's what people were doing, and I thought that that was how you were supposed to have fun and
No.
enjoy social environments. I think it did help me because, like many kids, I was a little socially anxious. I didn't really know how to connect with people. And so if I got a little drunk, oh, I'm a little
Yeah,
looser. I could talk
same.
to people, talk to
Mm.
girls. Um, then that kind of carried into college just a little bit where, I was I was on like a school, like a university sports team. And, athletes in college, particularly like certain sports, they like to play hard and then party hard. It's
Mm.
like
Mm.
working hard on the field and then working
Mm,
really hard to like, party afterward. And so I was just kind of doing what everyone else is doing. Never really because I was like, I truly enjoy this. It was just I did this more of like a this was how you fit in.
mm,
Um, but it never really distracted from my connection to fitness until college, until I was like, man, this doesn't feel good.
mm.
I don't get to train as hard as I want to. I'm not as focused, you know, and that was kind of when I just sort of like it occurred to me that maybe alcohol and maybe drinking just didn't really align with
Not
my
the best.
fitness. Yeah, with my fitness
Uh,
priority.
when you
So
refer to sports team, was it like what is it, a soccer, or football, or how does it work?
yeah, it was university soccer, American football. I mean,
Okay.
European football, but I played, for most of my life, and then up until about 20, 21 years old, and then I retired or I quit the sport, and I didn't ever really go back in any capacity because that was really when I found, training and fitness as a pursuit all in like all of its own. Where prior to that, working out was something you did, but then you played sport, and then it was like, wait a minute, fitness is the sport that I really
Mm.
enjoy the most. It's what I want to play, and it was around the time that CrossFit became a bit more mainstream and was
When was
also
that? 2009,
2009,
8? Yeah. Okay.
2007 to 2009. Um, so I was an fairly early adopter of CrossFit, early adopter of CrossFit sport.
Did you have a CrossFit box around you, or I mean, back then, as you said, it was not very popular. How did you
Hmm.
find out about the sports?
Um, I was very plugged into a lot of online training forums, and I just kind of kept my ears open. And when new things emerged, I would investigate them.
Mm,
So, fortunately, there was a CrossFit.com, a main website where you could go and really just research for yourself, like, what is this thing. There were not a lot of CrossFit boxes or gyms in 2007, 2008 in the world, let alone my particular region. There were two in my area that were within a 30-minute drive, and so I did go and experience like a little bit of the in gym community CrossFit world. But for the most part, in my first year or year and a half of exploring CrossFit, it was all through CrossFit.com, the
mm,
website, and watching videos and just developing an interest in really exploring fitness in a lot of different disciplines. So, okay, I had lifted weights and I had done, sports conditioning, but I'd never done these elements or these disciplines together at the same time, concurrently. I certainly had not really explored high level gymnastics or any skill based gymnastics. I had a small introduction to Olympic weightlifting, but this was now a much deeper, integration of Olympic weightlifting into my training, and the aerobic capacity component of CrossFit was also something I never really explored because I was a goalkeeper in soccer, I was a power athlete, and I never really learned, aerobic training through running or any discipline outside of some like, recreational bike rides that I would
yeah,
go on.
makes sense. How do you get into it then? Would you just like do research and this is going to be my training program? I do a little bit of weightlifting, a little bit of gymnastics, a little bit of running, or would you work with a coach right away?
I was at an interesting time in my life where I had, gone through a few phases of training that were different disciplines, and several of them that independently I had success with, but then also independently ran into some major obstacles. So I did like more traditional style bodybuilding training with like aggressive dieting in
Mm,
college, which I learned a lot of things from, but I also had some really big downfalls that came with it. I did sports performance training, which I had some big wins from, but then also some things that left me unfulfilled. I had a major injury in college, a back injury that that sidelined me, and then also just changed my perception of like health, wellness, and fitness for the next several years. So all of those things combined, I was really searching for something.
mm,
I was in a kind of a struggle place in my life where I was like, I'm not feeling connected to any one thing. I don't know. uh, what I've done in the past has left me thirsty for something new, and I've it, you know, other methods that I've tried have failed me. So how am I going to find the next thing? And so I think when CrossFit came along, it really, it came into my awareness. It was just really intriguing. It was like, oh, look at these disciplines. There's, so many different ways to train. I certainly had experienced that uh, intensity that
Mm.
CrossFit can deliver in ways that people really least expect. And then furthermore, because of the growth of like online media and what CrossFit was doing with media, I had direct access to watching some of the best CrossFitters of that era perform physical feats that were that were extraordinary. That were
Who
like, wow.
was it at the time? Who was someone you
I
looked up
mean,
to?
well, it started with women that were doing things that I couldn't do, and then it was Chris Spieler, it was James Fitzgerald, it was Josh Everett, it was some of the athletes back then that would no longer have a place in the sport because they were too polar in terms of their body weight, their size, but they were
Mm.
doing just feats that I couldn't have really imagined doing. But predominantly Chris Spieler, um, and I think James Fitzgerald, and once I saw that, I was like, well, holy smokes! Like I want to be able to do all those
Mm.
things. I want to be, and I want to look like those guys. I mean,
Mm.
they looked great. They had great physiques, but they were also primarily driven by performance
Yep.
and fueling themselves well, and not this lift, restrict, lift, restrict dieting to sort of create an aesthetic or
Yeah.
a objective appearance.
Yeah. I got that. So you went to the CrossFit. Did you want to compete right away, or how did that happen?
Um, I didn't really I didn't really want to compete right away. I mean, what I wanted was I wanted to dedicate myself to the training so I could get better. I wanted to dedicate myself to learning the discipline of CrossFit, and it was early on that I was let's say just like in those days you could not avoid seeing and being connected to the competition scene of CrossFit. It was everywhere. So if you were just somebody who was working out at your local gym, there would be a pop-up CrossFit competition that everybody would
Mm.
participate in. And so that to me was like, as I started to see it, the first gym that I joined as a member, they in the third week they had a in-house competition for all the members, and I was like, oh, this looks like fun, like this is super cool, but I'm not good enough yet to do the
Mm.
competitions. Like I got to
Mm.
work on my right. I had that kind of mental block. So and certainly when I saw the competitors that were competing at the CrossFit Games in 2007, 2008, I was in awe of like their abilities, but I was like, I'm not that good yet. But it didn't take long for, my skills or my fitness level to sort of stand out amongst, everybody that I was
Mm.
around, it to the point where it was like, oh, actually, you're kind of better than a lot of people, and you should get me, you could give this a try. You would be good at it, which
Do you
that
credit your athletic background, or is it just like talent, or is it your work ethic? What do you say?
with CrossFit, it was, and this is true for everybody. There are some elements of you know talent or sort of innate abilities, but to be good at CrossFit, you have to put in the time. You
Put
have
in
to
the
have a
work and
training
yeah.
back. Yeah, you have to have a big training background in resistance training and in aerobic training, and you have to be really strong. You have to be a good technical lifter. You have to have good um, limb length and proportions for the sport, and you have to have a massive aerobic fitness base. And if you can combine all those things, and you've put in enough training, like training time, and your training age is advanced enough, then you can go and learn the skills of CrossFit relatively quickly. Um, People that start out with CrossFit, they don't have that big training base, and they try and learn skills of CrossFit. They get so frustrated. Like, I
Yeah,
can't
for
learn how
sure.
to do a muscle up. It's like, well, you haven't done strict pull ups for the last decade. So,
Fair
you
enough.
don't really
Yeah.
have a huge, you don't have a huge upper body pulling background.
Mm.
So I had all that coming in. I mean, I had, close to a decade of resistance training, at least 5 years of really sound, 4 to 5 years of sound resistance training. I had a decent, cardiovascular background, but not great. And early days of CrossFit, it was much more of a power sport than it was an endurance or an aerobic sport. There were a lot of short tests of power, like 90-second workouts, which I could sustain for, but not the 12 to 20-minute AMRAPs. Those were
Mm.
really were hard for me because I didn't understand aerobic fitness at the
Mm.
time. I hadn't built that into my system, but because I had all that strength training background, it was like, muscle ups came pretty easy for me. Kipping pull ups, I was doing them day one,
Mm.
butterfly, like chest to bars, like
Mm.
the stuff that people were like, how do you do that? It's like, well, because you I have a training background. So people who accelerate their time in the sport, that was what that was what set them apart. Not they were like just talented or gifted. It was like, no, they did the
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure. I think it's with almost any CrossFit athlete, right? They have like an athletic background, like almost
Of
every
course.
time. Yeah.
Uh, Although now you start to see there are athletes who are doing well in the sport whose first exposure to athletics and to fitness was CrossFit at
Okay.
age 12. So they learned CrossFit at age 12. Now they're 22 because they've been doing it for 10 years, and they are like, they don't have a sports background,
It
so to
makes
speak.
sense because now parents take their kids into the CrossFit gyms and
Yeah.
show them how it works. Back then, I mean, when CrossFit is new, obviously this, yeah, it makes sense that it's this way, right?
Yeah.
So once you competed, how far did you come?
In my competitive career,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was, my first competition I ever did, I was in 2009, and my last competition I ever did was in 2016. So it was a 7, 8 year career of competing. Um, my first attempt at making it to the CrossFit Games was in 2010 with my team from my gym. We made it. And then I made it in 2011 with my team, and then 2012. And each year we improved our performance and our placement. We took
Mm.
sixth place in 2012 at the Affiliate Cup, which was, sort of the last of my team. It was the last year that I competed on teams because it became clear that, to get six people all together with a similar goal when the age gaps were significant.
Mm.
I was in my 20s, and some of my teammates were closing in on 40 years old with families, and we all had
Yeah.
different goals. And so it was like we had a great run, we did some great things, it was exciting, and I had also advanced, progressed my fitness level to the point where I could make a very legitimate run at being an individual competitor in the sport. So 2013, I switched to individual competition, make my CrossFit Games debut as an individual competitor, come back in 2014, do better. 2015, I take the year off from competing, due to family circumstances. And then 2016, I come back. So really, I've trained 4 years consecutively as an individual competitor. And on 2016, I come in and have the best performance of my life, and probably the best performance I was ever going to have. So it was a lifetime achievement at that 2016 games. And after that year, I guess I officially retired. I
What
thought
was
I
your
would come
rank?
back.
What was your rank
I
then?
was I ranked 12th that season.
Okay.
So, which, I started out my first year at 43rd. The following year I was at 26th, something like that. And then the year after that I was in, 12th place. So I made consistent improvements year after year for
Absolutely.
6 seasons. And I, never I thought maybe I would come back for another CrossFit Games, but, um, I was certain that I was going to need to reallocate a lot of my focus
Mm.
because I was having my first child in
Mm.
2017. And
I just wanted to say, like, it's so time consuming. There's like those Netflix documentaries, and you see those athletes training for hours. I don't know, three
sure.
training sessions or whatnot. How did you make a living? Did you make money with CrossFit alone?
Yeah, during that time, I was coaching CrossFit. So I joined. I First and foremost, got into the CrossFit community with the intention of becoming a coach, and then starting my coaching career, my health and fitness, career. I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to eventually open up a gym of my own, and uh, all of that started to unfold in 2009, and till today, I'm still doing that. That is how I've always
Wow.
earned a living
Mm,
for the past
mm.
15 years. Um,
How
early
many hours
days,
would you work out back then?
um, I don't know. It ranged anywhere. I mean, I think in my peak of competitive CrossFit, when I was, the times a year where I trained the most, there would be probably 4 hours dedicated to training time, but then you have to account for the time that was dedicated to, uh, the recovery aspects of it, and more sometimes like the mental visualization and preoccupation of just thinking about it. So it was very consuming. But all throughout that, I was coaching clients, I was coaching group classes, I was running a gym, and
That makes
I
what,
was
like 15-hour long days or?
they were long days. Yeah, I mean, I would probably get to the gym many days around 5 a.m. and not leave until 5 p.m. So there's 12-hour day, and then put in some additional thinking time about it in the evening. And so yeah, it was a full-time
Mm,
life,
absolutely.
and I loved every minute of it. I never thought like, oh, this is such a grind. It was like, this is all I want to be doing, and I surrounded my whole life with that.
Mm.
And my wife today, my girlfriend at the time, she was on board for all of it. I mean, in hindsight, I look back, I'm like, wow, I really consumed a lot of our life with this thing. But she was extremely excited about it. We met
Is
some
she
of our
into CrossFit as well?
she was. That's how we met, and
Okay,
she's very into fitness. And at the time, CrossFit was what we were all into.
cool.
Now she's doing she's doing the same type of thing with me,
Mm,
functional bodybuilding.
mm.
But we met so many of our close people there, and it became such a part of our life that it didn't. I don't think it felt to either of us as like, gosh, this thing is just like
Mm,
your job is taking up our whole life.
mm. Coming back again to when you ranked 12th, you said, right? Do you get like a sponsorship or like
Oh yeah, the
prize
question
money
about like
or?
money. Yeah, like the monetary side of CrossFit as a competitor, and I can only really speak to this about, like I said, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, was probably different than it is today. Although, for the most part, the money in the prize money is very limited. So as a 12th place, the 12th best CrossFitter on the planet, let's say at the time, who also, did all the qualification steps to
Mm,
get there, and probably competed in like one to two somewhat sizable competitions outside of that per year, which was all I could really handle. I think probably total prize money was less than $20,000,
mm,
maybe around 20, 25.
mm.
Because I think it was like $12,000 for the CrossFit Games. I think I won another competition, which was like $3,000. Regional placements to qualify for the
Mm,
games was about
mm.
3,000. So it was not a huge
It's
sum of
tough.
money.
It's tough when you work, I mean, as a coach and then have to train for these events yourself. Like, it's tough.
Well, it's not tough if you I mean, it's probably tough if you look at it as like, I have to do this thing to go out and make 20K a year. But if you're like, this is what I'm going to do with all my time, and it's super fun, and I'm growing as a human, and I'm pursuing this career as a coach, and on top of that, I get to go and compete, and people
Mm,
cheer for me,
mm,
and they give
no,
me a little bonus check. Great. Now, if you're 25 years old and you have nothing going on in your life except being a competitor, and you spend all your time and you're
no,
like, okay,
I
I'm going
did.
to make it someday, and making it looks like making 25K a year if you're really good, that's really brutal.
And
Now,
no,
there were
no,
probably the top 3 to 4 athletes of the sport were making more than that, maybe 50 to 100K a year in prize earnings, and then the top guy was making, maybe 350 to 400K with the CrossFit Games winnings, etc. And then they might have sponsorship, endorsements that are much more sizable. But I had a couple sponsorships, but it was also not very,
mm,
it was not lucrative.
mm, mm,
So it was hard at the time. It's probably harder today because it's a bit more. There's a bit more saturation with who
mm,
wants to get into the sport.
mm,
So people are, athletes of my era. Some of them went on to build businesses on the heels of their, you know, the attention that they got
yeah,
from the sport. And those, there are very few that did a good job of it. They, I think, myself included, like, we're very fortunate to have used that platform. Hey, we competed hard. We represented the sport very well. We were gracious and, uh, appreciative of our fan base. We gave back in the way of education, the way of coaching knowledge, the way of, entertainment. And in turn, from there, we grew something. I grew something, for example, in functional bodybuilding that helped to answer a need that people
mm,
had and give them education, great training, and an
mm,
ongoing place to learn. And
mm,
so they have in turn repaid me with their time, attention, and money,
mm,
as I've grown this business.
mm,
So
mm,
that's how the whole entire sport and the time that I spent competing turned into monetary, reward and business. What I
mm.
made during my time during CrossFit
Yeah.
was it was very minimal.
My takeaway here is do it for with passion and not for money. Like,
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would certainly not be the sport that, if you're gifted as an athlete, and you have the potential to be very good at something, um, you know, go play
better off
go
there.
play
Yeah.
soccer or
Yeah.
go play something else. Like,
Mm.
I would say, like, probably a Division 3, European soccer player is making more than
Probably.
CrossFit Games
Probably. Yeah.
champion. I don't know
Yeah.
though.
Um, once you stopped CrossFit, what then? You wanted obviously to do your own thing. You already had your coaching business. How, or let's say, how did you transit into functional bodybuilding? This is what you're doing now, right? Like your entire business, functional bodybuilding. How did that
That's
happen?
right. Um, well, it sort of happened by chance that, I finished CrossFit. And I don't I think it's important to say I don't view functional bodybuilding as, like, you know categorically different than CrossFit. We're essentially doing a lot of the same things that CrossFit does as well. We're trying to get people strong, improve their cardiovascular fitness, their aerobic fitness, you know express movement through a lot of different
Hmm.
patterns and exercises. Um, but if you the CrossFit, the expression of that movement is designed around peak intensity, as, like, hey, we get you going as hard and as fast as you can, and that is how we're going to get change to happen in your body. And it certainly has its merits, and it certainly can deliver a lot of intensity. But if I could explain, like, somebody who grew up playing competitive football and made it all the way to college, or let's say the NFL, so American football,
Hmm.
when you finish your career as an American footballer in the NFL, you know, and you have a desire to stay in shape for the rest of your life, zero, zero athletes that do that, leave competitive NFL football, will ever, as a method of staying in shape, go put on pads and line up for, you know, like, another NFL snap. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
the sport was the sport, and then you're not going to use the sport in the same way to stay fit for the
True.
rest of your life.
Yeah.
So same thing with competitive CrossFit. Competitive CrossFit and using CrossFit for, like, general population, not the same thing. Competitive CrossFit is a vastly higher expression of both intensity, volume, and, complete, workload on the body. So once I could finish the sport, it was like, okay, how do I come back to doing something for the rest of my life? I'm not going to keep doing it this way.
But we're talking
And
about competitive CrossFit. I mean, there's people who keep themselves fit with CrossFit, or would it also imply it?
absolutely, I
it
think there are people that do it. Um, my what I knew in the back of my mind was that CrossFit was not my only experience of being in good shape and loving fitness. I had been in great shape just doing weight training,
mm,
bodybuilding. I had
mm,
been in great shape, you know, doing more bike riding. I had
mm,
been in great shape doing a combination of it. So I knew that there were disciplines of fitness training that had lots of merit. I
mm,
always knew that bodybuilding and resistance training alone, even not performed at max intensity. I'm not talking go and do 5 sets of 5 and try and build up to your max back squat, because that was the CrossFit prescription.
yeah.
5, 5, 5, 5, 5. What's the heaviest weight you lifted? I knew that if I just lifted back squats for 10 to 12 reps at a tempo and I superset it with pull-ups and I just got a good training and stimulus,
Yep.
that could make me great. So I was like, okay, how do I bring back or bring together disciplines from my life
mm,
to create a what feels like a little bit more balanced
mm,
approach to
mm,
training,
mm.
because I didn't want to go in every day and smash the intensity button. It stopped appealing to me and my body was pretty worn out from it. The other thing that was also important was that I had some injuries that were like kind of had accumulated over the time I had been competing in CrossFit. And so that limited what I was capable of doing in the window of about 6 months after I stopped competing. My shoulder was hurt, my knee was hurt, my back was hurt. I had different things that I needed to address. How do you address pain? Well, you do resistance training, but you go all the way down to the
Mm,
physical therapy end of
mm,
the spectrum
mm.
and you build yourself back up. So here I was exploring in my training how to rehabilitate, how to use weight training in the weight training discipline or bodybuilding discipline, and then still incorporate all the things that I loved about CrossFit with aerobic training, because that was a big foundation for how I became great
Mm.
in my sport. So I was like, well, CrossFit doesn't do aerobic training. It doesn't do aerobic, conditioning. It does testing aerobic fitness. How do you condition for aerobic fitness is very different than go out and run a 5K
Yeah.
and give me your best time. So I'm like, okay, we'll just start doing all these things together. And then social media was this outlet for me to showcase what I was always doing. When I showcase my training, people ask questions, I give them answers. This is how I engage with the audience. This is how I learned a lot as a coach.
Mm.
And that period of 6 months that followed my competitive CrossFit career, there was a lot of back and forth happening between the audience, my fitness audience on Instagram, and what I was putting out. And it was like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, that looks different. That looks
No.
kind of similar to
No.
CrossFit, but you're
Mm.
also doing some bodybuilding and you're doing some rehab and yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it like this because I have this going on. And it was like learning what people resonated with based upon what I was just naturally putting out, which then became the foundation of, hey, you know what? There's
Mm.
something that is uniquely different here. Well, I stumbled across calling it functional bodybuilding, but that was like resonating with people. So that is where the methods and the foundations of what I'm doing
Got
today,
it.
the
Got it.
origins of it.
Okay. Okay. Good. When you look back at your career in CrossFit once again, I have an opinion on that, but I want to know yours. Do you think it's healthy to be a competitive CrossFit athlete doing so much training?
Um, no, I mean, just like it's not healthy to go and play in the NFL, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, this was
I mean, it's healthy in that, like, we a lot of people make sacrifices to go out and like pursue their dreams and have fulfillment and earn a living. And it's like would you say something like, hey, there's this high income earner like CEO who's making $2 million a year, but they're working 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours a week. They're missing their kids' birthday parties, they're missing their kids' sports events. Is that healthy? It's like, well, maybe, maybe not. I don't
Probably
know.
not.
It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, probably not. It's like, and so excuse me, just lost
I
my
was just
AirPod.
asking you because usually people think, oh, of course he's so healthy, he does so much sports, but what they don't get is it's very taxing on the body as well when you do so
Sure.
much. And as you
Yeah.
said, you had like shoulder, knee, I don't know what kind of injuries, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah. And it's
happens
like
when you train so intensely.
it's the same thing as like, you know, somebody who's like a Tour de France cyclist, right? It's like, is that a healthy sport? It's like, you know, you could make the argument like, well, they have amazing aerobic fitness, like their VO2 max is, in the top
Mm,
percent of
mm,
everybody. Like that's who we measure VO2 max against, is those
yep.
athletes. And so, yeah, they're really healthy. It's like, but they're super one dimensional. They maybe they lack, other aspects of health. Plus, there's this, there's a certain amount of stress that your body can tolerate. And so specifically in CrossFit, we didn't have the luxury of just being full-time athletes. I didn't, certainly. I was full-time in a lot of different things. And, the body can only tolerate so much of that. I got better and better at it. And I still look back and it's remarkable how much my body could tolerate.
Mm,
Like, whoa, I used to do
mm,
all of that in a
mm,
day and I did it 5 or 6 days a week. And that's a lot. But it's, it's something that you just like build a tolerance for and you grow into by doing it consistently for a long time. But no, it was not like the healthiest, and it certainly didn't. It's like you keep that up for 20 years. Like, yeah, maybe it has some detrimental outcomes. I mean, and then I'll say this too, like what I do today, people will look at and be like, man, that's super hard training, but it's all relative to your
right.
abilities.
Yeah, yeah.
With CrossFit sport, just like with any sport, it's like to get better, to keep getting better and climbing the ranks, you constantly have to push close to, if not beyond, your threshold and
Mm,
your tolerance of stress, right? That's
mm,
how it works.
mm,
You're getting better or you're just getting worse. And
mm,
so to get better, you got to keep flirting with that line. And it's when you're flirting with that line day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, that it starts to wear you out. The
yeah.
beauty of people when they make it to professional levels of many sports is that there is an off season generally for those athletes, and during the off season they can recuperate their body, they
Yeah,
can take time off, they
yeah.
can, somebody who just finished the Super Bowl, they might not do a workout for 2 months and just let their body completely, reset. Unfortunately, in the years that I did this in CrossFit, there was not an opportunity to take time
Just
off.
go, 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 go.
It was a long season, and then there were other, it was kind of
Mm.
an endless cycle.
But what you're saying is absolutely right. I think, especially if you're in this bubble when you're a competitor and very good at the top like you, and obviously you kind of see these other athletes that are even better that rank top 10 and say, oh, they're doing even more. So to get there, I need to do more as well. So I think even for the general population, it's very important to be, yeah, like just be aware of who you compare yourself to, right? If I
Yeah.
compare myself to like someone who plays soccer twice a week, then nothing, man, I'm such a hardcore gym goer.
Hmm.
And then I see like a bodybuilder who works 2 hours a day and does posing, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not that much of a hard worker, right?
Yeah.
This is very
I
important.
th- I think also one thing that I've never really talked about on a podcast before, and it really hasn't been something I've, in the past, attributed a lot of the challenge of coming up in the sport during my era to, but it's very clear to me now is that if CrossFit started in 2007, and it started to grow in popularity, really really big growth from 2010 to 2016. This was the peak years of growth. Think about when was when did short form or like m- social media truly start to gain momentum. And I'm not talking about Facebook, but like really Instagram
No,
started in that era too.
no.
And so when you play a sport, you go back to your, team off season, you train, you work hard, you hear about, oh, I heard that this team is doing this thing. Maybe you go to a preseason match, you see them play, you're like, damn, they were good. Like, we got to go back and work harder, which kind of like gets you all amped up and stresses you out a little bit. You got to go back. Then you have your season, right? It's these little micro moments where you get to experience and see what other people are doing.
Yep.
Now, CrossFit 2010, 2011, coming up in this sport, everything is digital. The competition itself starts on the internet, the CrossFit Open. You see all these competitors, you know who's winning which competition, you see their daily highlight reel on Instagram. We're all looking at this thing every day, stressed out to the max that everyone's getting better than you are. You have no idea what their training is, but we didn't get this at the time. It was not clear to me that, like, I can't just, I didn't have any context. All I knew was that there were about 30 guys in the world that I was comparing myself to. And every day somebody was setting a PR, and every day somebody was outperforming me. And all I knew was I just have to get better all the time.
No.
And it is what many of our young, like the young generations, are suffering from on social media, is this constant comparison to other people,
Yep.
constant comparison to other people's best life, not
Yep.
their shitty days and not their real
1%.
life. But in sport, this being one of the first sports that actually started and grew during this phase of like the growth of social media,
Mm,
it was massively stressful to me. I was
mm,
constantly
mm.
on edge and thinking, shit, I'm not getting better fast enough. And so that emotional nervous system like toll that it took on me, which I know is consistent with a lot of other people because I've talked to them about it, not everybody, but some of my former competitors, made it, I think, even that much harder. I didn't have a coach. It wasn't like, I mean, excuse me, I had a coach, but I didn't like show up to practice where the coach was like, hey, do this, do this, do
Mm,
this. You're
mm.
doing fine. Everything's set. Like, I didn't hand over my fitness completely to somebody else. Like, I did ask for their support and their guidance, but I was constantly like, what do I need to learn? I'm having to learn this. I'm
Yeah,
having to learn this. And
huge
it's
problem
like,
nowadays, I think.
it's like, imagine, for people who understand, college course, university course, or even PhD level, like focus, like when you're in, you're putting almost like a PhD level of focus into learning the sport
Mm.
intellectually and through social media and all the things that are out there. Plus, you're physically doing that kind of work. Um, yeah, it's just it's remarkable that a lot of us made it through without losing our minds, and that a lot of the young athletes that were coming up at that time, who were like in their early 20s or teenage years, you know, they got they've many of them I've seen have gotten just like chewed up and spit
Mm.
out by the
I
process
was I
of.
was a victim of this as well. Not so
Yes,
much like specifically of CrossFit, but back then, this era, 2014, I saw like, Instagram, everyone is bigger and stronger and faster, and I thought, oh, I just need to work out more and harder and longer.
mm-hmm.
And I was just like overworked. Like I would literally like, and then I had a coach who, it was a fitness model,
Mm-hmm.
very popular one, and his workouts are just like literally 2 hours, just arms. And I did that. I thought, okay, if he says that, I'm gonna do it. And like
Wow.
you can imagine, you do 3 weeks of that, and you're just like burned out, and no, the
Oh
body
gosh,
can't
yeah.
handle that. At least not naturally. Like obviously,
True.
yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know how it is. Like, maybe he can handle it. I can't. I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I understand you correctly, like functional bodybuilding is basically for people who want to stay fit, want to stay healthy, want to move well, but more in a sustainable way than maybe competitive CrossFit is, right?
Certainly, yeah. And it's, it is, to me, our tagline is look good, move well. It's this concept of like we 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 blend how our body moves and how we perform, with this notion that a lot of people are chasing a, a look that gives them confidence. So I see something in the mirror that I'm confident with. I The way I move, I feel confident with. The combination of those two things really can, um, be a powerful, you know, positive life, force for people. And that to get both of those things is not enough, but to sustain both of those
mm,
things for many, many years, that's what people chase, right?
mm,
It's like, hey, I look great today and I performed really great, but like next week I burnt out and I, took 3 months off.
mm.
Well, that's really not what we're chasing
Yep.
either.
Yep.
So there are principles of training, right? Going back to like the intensity concept, intensity is not bad. It's just what's the right dose of intensity
Yeah.
that allows you to improve, um, but not regress and burn out and get injured and want to stop. So those are kind of like the guiding principles behind how do we build a methodology. And
Right.
then when we get nuanced into the methodology of functional bodybuilding, then you start to see, okay, they really value these points because those points kind of feed that bigger concept that I just
Mm.
mentioned.
Talk me through that. Let's say I found you on Instagram. You're very popular there. I think 900,000 followers you have there. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like
Wow.
904, almost 950,000.
Close to a million. Crazy.
I know. That'll be a wonderful day.
Yeah, soon. I guess it will be soon. This year,
Perhaps.
probably.
Maybe.
But let's say I found you there and I say, oh, Marcus looks good. He moves well. He can do some crazy stuff with his body. I want to do this as well. How does it work? I go onto your website, I sign up, and then
I would say most people will start out by just copying a training, concept that I outline on social media,
mm,
which is big. We want people to actually just experience it.
mm,
They can go to our website and opt in to our newsletter, which
mm,
they'll get a bunch of free training content sent to them, workouts that they can go try today for free. Um, but our main program and our main service is what we call Persist. It's our group training online subscription. So, you can opt in to Persist. You can sign up for Persist, and you get 2 weeks to trial our training methods. Um, so everything that we show on social media is, from a training perspective, is a reflection of like
yeah, mm,
what I do. Um, the main purpose of social media has always been to provide some education, some value to somebody who can. And the lens I look at it is like, if somebody watches this today, can they actually go and implement this, and is it going to improve their training, their health, their fitness outcomes? If it can't, then why am I posting it?
mm.
And how much can it impact? How much is it going to resonate with them? And this could be psychological, growth. This could be physical growth, like, hey, this is a better way to do your chest flies, or it could be nutritional education. Any of those things really
In
go.
what form do you deliver that? Is it an app? Is it like weekly meetings?
Oh,
How
well,
does it work?
so yeah, I was still referring mainly to like what the social media content looks like, but no, the program and the training subscription is through an app. It's just
Okay.
yeah, we have a third party app that we use, and people can sign up, and
Mm,
it's um, a web based app, so it's not
mm,
like a mobile app in
mm.
the app store, but people can access it from their phones,
Yeah.
and they get daily training tips to go along with the daily
Mm,
workouts. They have rest day, and recovery activities to do on the days that we don't have training prescribed. And then once they're in the app, they have access to a lot of resources on nutrition, on warm ups, cool downs, mobility,
okay.
on
So
a
that
variety of things.
complete
So
as
they
well, the tight parts, everything.
ex-
Okay.
exactly. Yeah,
Cool. Cool. Is that the same thing you personally do? Or
it
I
is. Yeah.
imagine it's similar, but a little bit adopted because you're probably still ahead of, like, let's say, a normal
Well,
guy.
one of the things that I've commit. I mean, as the years have gone by, excuse me, um, I have found that, I mean, certainly I don't need, and I don't want as much training volume as I've had in the
Mm,
past. So the big difference between what the training program in Persist looks like today versus what I did as a CrossFit athlete is not so much like the workouts are totally different. It's just that there's less total time in the gym, So I'm aiming for most people in our program to go into the gym and in 60 minutes, sometimes like closer to 75 minutes, get a great training session that can move the needle on their fitness. And that's still true for me to this day too. Like I want to come in and
Yep.
do about that much hard training. You know, I if I want to get better, I don't need 90 minutes or 2 hours. I just need to know how to adequately and
Yep.
appropriately apply the
Yep.
stimulus and the
No.
intensity. Now, I spend more time beyond that moving every day. I get a lot of steps in every day. Um, and, sometimes my training, like I'm always in like what I call just research and development phase of developing programs. But my training programs are like, you know, I'm working right now on a training split that's potentially going to show up in May for our customers. Um, and I might try. Okay, I'm going to trial this new, movement superset because I want to see how this feels. And
Yep.
then, okay, that felt good. Okay, we'll put it in the program, next month, kind of thing.
Mm, mm. Okay. That makes sense. And like that, because there's people who still live in the 90s and they go, this is the way to go, nothing else. In bodybuilding is the bro split, right? Still doing that. And
Yeah,
if it works, then it's fine. But like you, I also try to see, okay, what is out there? Like, what can you do differently? What can you experiment with? And then see how it goes. So like that.
yeah.
If you had to describe your current fitness goal in one sentence, what would it be nowadays?
Um, One sentence. Yeah, currently I am trying to rediscover what it takes to build both muscle and performance in a measurable uh, and consistent way. So if I break that down, like post CrossFit era, um, 2017, 2018 was me sort of like shedding a little bit of the CrossFit identity. Like I'm a CrossFit competitor, got to still train a little bit like a CrossFit
Mm,
competitor because I still want to maybe jump back in the ring
mm, mm,
at some point. And then 2019, it was like, yeah, no, I'm stripping that a little bit. And in 2020, with COVID hitting and a lot of changes to my lifestyle and my business, 2020 to 2023 were more or less maintenance years for me, where I was just like, okay, I'm in this season of life where I'm not trying to get better. I just
maintaining.
want to look.
Yeah.
I just want
Mm,
to like have. I want to look good. I got a
yeah.
little bit more focus on aesthetics. And then I was like, I'm not happy with the fact that I've gotten weaker. I've lost muscle.
Oh, did you?
I
Okay.
Yeah, I want to refocus on, a purposeful progression in that department for my own sake.
Mm,
And that is now where I've kind of been focused you know, for the last 6 months, and where I want to see myself go in the next year, 2 years,
mm,
and take a break from, what turned into a little bit of a preoccupation with my aesthetic and less of like how am I performing? So I got a little
mm,
bit too good into the look good
yeah. Yeah.
side of the look good move well equation.
But it's
And
very difficult. It's very difficult to balance that because I'm too like into aesthetics, and performance is for me not so much like, oh, how much can I, not any specific CrossFit movement, but right now I want to do the splits, for example, or I want to do the
mm,
gymnastics flare, which is like a
yeah,
element from gymnastics, obviously. And I want to do both, and it's so difficult to combine that because you need to be careful with the intensity. If you do, a push workout and you go too hard on chest and shoulders, triceps the next day, uh, you will not be able to I don't know, do the flare, for example, where you also need the shoulders a lot and shoulder mobility. And to balance that is quite tricky. So I'm
yeah,
in there as well, trying to balance it, trying, okay, what is a good intensity? I want to focus on aesthetics, but at the same time, I think it's great to have both and not to
hmm,
focus on either or, because like, I think it's a very good plan to have both for several reasons. Um, extreme is probably never good. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
precisely, yeah. And that's so yeah. I like to. This is just shifting the balance a little bit for myself in life and in my training, and it's been really enjoyable. I also, for the better part of the last 4 years, um, the vast majority of training that I did was generally by myself. Like I
Mm.
didn't have training partners. I didn't train a lot in groups, and that has changed a lot for me in the last 6 months. I exclusively train with other people now. Like
Do you
I
enjoy
don't.
it more? Where's that?
Yeah, I mean it's also it's also just like I needed a change. I
Mm.
wanted to be around people. I wanted to use my skills and my abilities as an athlete to help other people, like
Yeah,
inspire other people, and then also get that inspiration from other people
the other
too.
way
Like
too.
yeah. and
One
and
thing I want to say
I'm
though.
just I'm also just at a place in life where I'm like, I just want to relate to people more. I've spent enough time doing the solo thing and being
Yeah,
an
yeah.
introvert, and it's that's sort of like a pattern I can easily fall back into, that it's just not serving me at this
Mm,
stage as
mm.
much.
One thing I want to say though, because you mentioned training with other people. For me personally, sometimes I hate working out with other people. Sometimes I love it, and it comes down to who it is with. If I have, like, let's say a colleague, a friend who's at the gym, not really enjoying it, all the time on their phones, I say, oh man,
Hmm.
like fuck that, I'm not coming with you
Yeah,
anymore, right?
sure, for sure.
And on the
Yeah.
other hand, like this was in Thailand, this was amazing. I had a couple of Olympians there. One was Taekwondo, one was gymnast, and I loved just being around them. Not even working out, just being around them because of the work ethic, and they knew what it takes to get there, and they gave me advice. It was amazing. So I
Very
think
cool.
surrounding very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I would agree. Like you can have the wrong types of training partners, in which case it's a real drain, and being by yourself is a way better outcome. But I've got the right people around me,
That's
fortunately.
important. I have a
Yeah.
last couple of questions, if you have a few minutes
Sure.
left.
Yeah.
One thing that is a trend right now, or has been a trend for quite a long time, the vegan diet. What are your thoughts on that?
Vegan diet, I think, as a long term sustainable approach to health and wellness for the majority of people, it ends up not working, because to
Why?
get to get an adequate, or like the full complement of nutrients, you have to be extremely you have to be very mindful and
Mm,
understand what you need and know where to get it. So it's like you can do the vegan diet and be successful long term, but you have to be like a highly educated consumer of it. Whereas a lot of people that switch to the vegan diet are not doing it. They're doing it more as like, oh, like I heard this was good. Like let me do it as like a quick fix to lose some weight, or oh, I heard it was healthier, so I'm just gonna like cut out meat products
mm,
or animal products,
mm.
and I'll be fine. And then they feel better for a period of, I don't know, anywhere from 6 to 12 months. And the reason being is that in switching to a vegan diet, they
Pay more
become a bit
attention.
more, they pay more attention, and they start to consume a lot more plant products, which generally are less processed. And so they're like,
Yep.
okay, great, I'm feeling better. And they took away a lot of the stuff that was making them feel bad,
Mm.
which wasn't chicken and beef. It was processed, um, food that
Burgers and
was,
whatnot. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. So, but then after 6 to 12 months, then now their body is feeling a little bit depleted and deficient. It's the same thing with somebody who goes on a fat loss, like a cut. They go to like lose body fat, and they feel good for like a period of time, and then at some point their body fat levels get low,
Mm,
and they start to feel like shit, and they're like, oh, how could this thing that made me feel so good and made me get healthier
mm,
now
mm.
make me feel like shit? It's like, oh, because you're malnourished. Right? It's
I
like
agree.
same kind of thing. So
Mm.
it just takes a lot more awareness to get that long term great, you know
Yep, much more
complement
planning,
of
and usually when people don't even manage to cut out the garbage from their diet,
hmm.
how they want to proceed with the vegan, that requires so much more planning. Yeah,
True.
agree with you.
Yeah.
From everything you achieved in your life, what would you say is your biggest accomplishment
Mm.
so far?
yeah, so far it is it's my marriage to my wife. It that
Mm,
is yeah, it's I mean my children are a very close second, but that's something I'm still very much
well,
I'm working on both a lot, but the relationship I have to my wife right now um is like we met each other 15 years ago. We've been married for 8 years, and the way I'm experiencing our relationship today in the last several months, it's like it's almost like, oh my god, the payoff for putting so much work into our relationship over the past 15 years, and now I have like what feels like the closest, deepest, most fulfilling relationship of my life, like that I'm experiencing almost for the first time. I'm like, oh my, so it
so
just
what do you
feels
do?
like
Spell the beans. What's the secret?
I mean, work on it like you work on the things that you're most passionate in life about. It's like, don't take for granted that this is, because you both are wearing a ring that says you're quote unquote committed to each
Mm,
other,
mm,
that you're actually fulfilling the other person. Like learning what it means to be in a secure relationship and all the things that people and humans need from a partner or need from in a secure relationship, and figuring out how to deliver that to your partner, um, getting professional support in looking at your relationship from an outside lens and helping you communicate better. um, I don't know, there's so much that goes into it, but it just starts with like fundamentally, like when someone says, I want to be with this person the rest of my life, that's great. And then how do you show that you want to be with somebody for the rest of your life?
mm,
You invest into the to like evolving with them, because you're not going to be the same person a year,
mm,
5 years, 10 years from
mm.
now. So if you want to be with this person, then you better be like evolving that connection
Yeah,
at every stage,
yeah.
so
Grow
that in
together.
10 years this person still wants to be with me and I still want to be
Mm,
with them.
mm, mm.
And so yeah, I don't know,
That's
we're
deep.
kind of already
That's deep.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't
this
think
is
we would speak
this
about
is
that today.
the deepest place I've been in my life lately.
Man, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
You make the impression that you're into self-development, that you try to become, better, not only in the gym and as an athlete, but also as a business owner, as a dad. Uh, what do you do to work on your mindset and become also mentally stronger?
I mean, I think fitness played a big component for that for many years for me. I learned how, discipline and repeated actions can change the fabric of your, you know, mental and emotional strength and health. Um, and now I've learned that, and I've learned that the same discipline and hard work on relationships and on,
Mm,
mindset and on emotional attunement to oneself and to others, like that has the power to change our experience on this planet, like, and
mm,
how we get to feel fulfillment and sadness and the highs and the lows, and that it's like this is all we're here for. Like
mm, mm,
there's nothing else beyond that. It's like, because once it's over, it's over. So whatever the experiences you're having today are, and whether it feels good or feels bad, it's like that's what you get. And if you continue to develop as a human, you might get to experience those feelings even more deeply, and therefore have a greater experience on this planet. And so I don't know, that's kind of stuck with me for it's been I felt that and I've known that for a lot of years. I think I but it's each year, each passing year, it just becomes more clear to me, like, okay,
wow.
yeah, that's why I'm here, that's what
Mm,
we're doing. And
deep.
if I'm not helping other people get there, then I'm not doing my job, or I'm not of service to them. And if I'm not doing it myself, then who am I to stand up in front of an audience and say, hey, listen to me, I know what's going on? Because I don't.
That's awesome. I want to leave it at that. That was very genuine.
You
I like
bet.
to hear that. I thought we would talk about fitness, but this last 5 minutes were, yeah,
Perfect.
spot on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where can
Well,
people
thanks,
find
Mark,
you
for your.
if they want
Oh
to
yeah,
know more about you?
just go to Marcus Philly on all the social media platforms, and you'll get an opportunity to see some of my short form content. Go to YouTube, long form content, and if you get inspired and that feels like, hey, this I resonate with this guy, then pop on my email list. So
Yeah,
functional
subscribe to
dash
them. They're
yeah
good. I like them.
functionalbodybuilding.com
Right now, I
for
get like I think every week or so, like with the high protein meal ideas and so on. Good
yeah,
stuff.
right on. Yeah,
Good stuff.
that's it.
Dude, thanks a lot for coming onto the show here. It was deep. It was deep. I gotta say that.
Good,
And I hope you don't mind if I hit you up every now and then on Instagram, ask how you
of
are,
course.
what you're on to, and yeah, just best of luck with everything, family, business, your fitness journey.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks a lot,
Appreciate it. Yeah, my pleasure.
Marcus. All the best.
Right on. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.